Buy or wait? There's a big question going around right now, and I want to bring you some client stories so that you can make a decision and decide what you'd like to do in 2023. Let's start with some wins my clients are currently having. A lot of buyers I speak to are a little nervous in today's market. Interest rates keep going up. They're not sure if the prices are gonna come down again. There's a lot of uncertainty with news headlines and just so much going around and so much buzz about the market may crash. But the truth is, and something I share with my clients is, you have to focus on the market you are entering. So you may read these headlines, it may make you a little nervous, and yes, interest rates are going up. That is the truth. But the truth is, each market is different. And you need to know your numbers and your data in that particular market so that you can make an educated decision. What the news is sharing with you is all about the nation, not necessarily Las Vegas. So it is very important to me, and something I do for my clients is I send them facts, actual facts, and a data sheet from our local title company every single week so that they can keep track and follow the trend. Just hear this. We had an $11 million sale just this month of March in 2023. $11 million. So when people say that people are not buying property right now, they're completely wrong. The average sales price for this month was $537,000. Crazy. That's above the median price range. So if you're out there and you're not really sure, let's get into this video and I'm gonna share with you a couple of things that you need to know before you enter our market. Let's talk about new home builders. You may hear about the nationwide home builders. Lennar, Toll Brothers, KB Homes, they are having huge price adjustments. Yes, this is true even in Las Vegas. My client came to me, first-time home buyer, so excited to buy a home. I took her around, we checked out different neighborhoods. She's pretty new to Las Vegas in this marketplace. She realized her dollar would go a lot further if we went a little bit further north in Sky Canyon. Her budget would allow her to buy a brand new home. We walked into the model homes, we checked it out, everything was perfect, everything was exactly what she wanted. So are there deals in these new home builds? Yes. The good thing about a new home builder is oftentimes they have a mortgage company, like Lennar in this instance. They have their own mortgage company. So they're able to work within their company to formulate a deal that is amazing. And I haven't seen deals like this since I've been a real estate agent. My client was able to walk into a brand new property, $50,000 under list price. So that means that someone, when the community first opened, may have paid $50,000 more than she's about to pay. We were able to buy down her rate to 4.99 for 30 years. And they're giving her closing cost assistance, so she doesn't have to come to the table with much. That's the goal. Oftentimes when I'm working with a buyer who's not cash, they have a mortgage, is I always talk to them about what's your monthly payment, what are your closing costs, and what you need to bring to the table to make this deal happen, and what other costs are going to be associated down the road. With new builds, there's blinds that you often have to purchase, fridges, washer dryer, and if it's a brand new home, you are going to have to invest in putting in a backyard, landscaping. So these are all things you're going to have to think about. But in this instance, my client not only got all of those great incentives, she gets blinds, washer dryer, fridge, and she got a premium lot site that normally would have cost her an additional $5,000. Incredible. I'm so excited for her. We haven't seen this in the last few years because there was so much demand and so many buyers entering our market. So if you're a buyer out there, you want a brand new home, you're open to different communities, and you're wanting to explore what that looks like, new home builds could be a great opportunity for you to buy a brand new home and not have to worry about major systems like your plumbing. You're not gonna have to worry about your AC. It's all brand new. So if you're out there, you're kind of teeter-tottering, maybe I'm not really sure. I went to my bank and I got an interest rate of 6.75. Maybe look at a new home build where you go through their mortgage program and they're offering all these really great incentives. So new home builds can be the way to go if you're looking for a deal. Motivated sellers. Sellers are motivated and open to doing things like paying your closing costs, buying down your rate, and offering concessions. Post-pandemic, sellers weren't offering anything. They wanted top dollar, and if you wanted their home, you're probably gonna have to pay over appraised value, come up with the cash to pay over appraised value, and possibly pay even more of a down payment, and they weren't giving you any closing costs, no concessions, and it was this total battle with multiple offers and all of this madness. That's done now. So although interest rates have gone up, that's the truth, you have the opportunity to ask for things like closing costs, rate buy downs, repair credits, all of these things that you weren't able to ask for before. So what does it look like to go to the closing table as a buyer? Well, you're going to be asked to pay a few things. Closing costs are roughly 1 to 3% of the purchase price. If you're coming in with cash, it's going to be closer to the 1%. If you have a loan, it's going to be closer to that 3% mark. Things included in your closing costs: loan origination fees, appraisal fees, title searches, credit checks, surveys, taxes, prepaid HOA, prepaid utilities, and that appraisal fee. One thing that's important for me to do as an agent is call the lender that my buyer has chosen to work with and find out what those closing costs are going to be, so that when I'm negotiating a deal, I know where I need to be in terms of asking for closing costs, or maybe even asking for a rate buy down. I'll get into that in a minute. At the end of the day, as a buyer, you want to know, how much is my monthly payment going to be? That is the most important thing I make sure my buyers understand. It's not always about the purchase price or even the terms. It really comes down to, what am I paying every single month, and what does it look like to either A, buy down that rate, or B, come to the table with less money. Right now, you have the opportunity to ask the seller for closing costs. That's a ton of savings for you, because don't forget, that money you put on the table, you're not getting back. It's going towards those closing costs, and that's it. So if you're out there and you want to buy a home, you may not have a lot of money saved up, this is a great opportunity to look into buying a home. According to Redfin, approximately 42% of homes sold offered concessions or closing costs. That's insane. We haven't seen that in years. Like I shared, post-pandemic, you'd be lucky if you got the house for what asking price was. You were paying over ask. You were competing with tons of offers, and the seller was definitely not paying your closing costs. Requests for repairs and concessions. During your escrow period, you have something called due diligence. And during this period, you're gonna do things like hire an inspector to check out all the major systems. I typically make the phone call to the utility companies and find out what the water bill and the electric bill is. And you can ask the seller all sorts of different questions about the home, if they've done any updates or upgrades. This is the time to get all that done. Now, during this period, you also have a sheet that you can fill out called a request for repair sheet. On this sheet, you can ask for things like repair the AC or get the water heater serviced. There's a ton of things that can come up during this period with the inspection, and you have the opportunity to ask that the seller fix those things or provide a credit so that you don't have to deal with it, and the seller is oftentimes doing these things for you. In an instance, I had a client. He was a single guy looking for his first home. Super exciting. He wanted to be in this older part of town. So in that, I knew there was a couple of things we needed to really check out. And those were the major systems, like the AC, the water heater, and I even made him do a sewer line inspection. So all of these things came back, and the water heater had a huge issue. It was literally hanging on by a thread. So in this instance, I asked the selling agent, hey, my buyer really wants this house, but that water heater, it's on its last leg. And that's gonna really suck if he moves into this house and it bursts, because that's what typically happens. If you've ever bought a house, you know, all the things that could have happened while the seller was in there happen when you move in, because that's just what happens. So I was able to negotiate a credit for my client to not just get the cheapest, whatever, bottom of the barrel water heater. We got one of the best water heaters with the instant hot and the installation, and I made sure that we got that quoted so that he was able to get that credited back from the seller. We also negotiated some closing costs, so he had a really great deal and he was really happy. So in this marketplace, we're able to do that. We're able to ask for things like that, and it's not out of line. So something I tell my buyers is, not all deals are about the price. Sometimes the deal is the terms. Sometimes you may pay close to ask, but you're getting closing costs, you're getting concessions, you're getting rate buy downs, you're getting all these really great benefits that benefit you at the end of the day, even if you have to come in closer to ask. So negotiation isn't always about purchase price. It can often be the terms that really seal the deal. You may be hearing a lot of buzz about rate buy downs. These are a great option for buyers. So what is a rate buy down? A buy down is a way for a buyer to obtain a lower interest rate. This is done by paying discount points at the closing table. It is a one-time fee paid up front. Like I shared earlier, it's important for you or your agent to call the lender and find out what those programs look like and also find out how much they're gonna cost so that when you're negotiating the deal, you have that number in mind and you can make sure you write it in the purchase contract. 2-1 buy downs are the most popular right now, and this is how they work. Let's say your lender quotes you at 6.25%. So the seller would offer you a credit and you would use that credit towards your loan origination discount points, and your loan would come down to 4.25, and then the next year would be 5.25, and then after that you're gonna go back to that 6.25. So that is how that works. I think the biggest thing I really stress to my buyers is you wanna understand what it looks like to refinance out of that situation. It's really nice to have a low monthly payment at first, but as you hear, it's going up after every year, and then it stops at that 6.25. But nobody wants to be stuck at 6.25. So the second next question you need to ask your lender is, how long do I have to wait to refinance this? Because we're all hoping that these interest rates come down. We can't promise anything because we don't have a crystal ball. But it's important to realize that your payment is going to go up, and you want to make sure you can afford that monthly payment at that 6.25 before you ask for that 2-1 rate buy down. To sum this up, I think it's important to strategize with your lender and your agent to see what your options are. You never know. It's so important to think to yourself, what does it look like for me to go to the closing table with little to no closing costs? What does it look like for me to buy down my rate? What does it look like for me as a cash buyer to get the best deal possible and have some concessions like requests for repairs or, like I shared earlier, a new water heater? These are all the things and opportunities that you have in our marketplace in 2023. Some other things to consider. When you own a home, you know what your monthly payment's gonna be. When you're renting, that landlord could increase your rent every single year. Should you buy now? It totally depends on your situation. Quick story. My client in Thailand had asked me, Courtney, can you go check out my investment property and give us a value? The tenant's been there for 20 years. 20 years. Arranged with him. So I go into the home and he's sitting there, really nice guy. And I asked him because I was just so blown away that he'd been renting for 20 years. He's been working in the casino industry for those 20 years. So I know he had a job. And his wife also had a job in the casino. So I was very confused why he was paying rent for 20 years. So I had to sit down with him and ask. I said, sir, why have you been paying rent for 20 years? Hasn't your rent increased? Fun fact, 72% of landlords increase their rent every single year. He said to me, yes, but I'm waiting for the market to crash. I was beside myself. He'd been waiting 20 years for the market to crash. He has held a steady job and gotten raises throughout the years. His wife has a steady job with raises throughout the years. I'm trying to understand why this man and this woman have not looked into possibly getting a mortgage and possibly buying a home, even the home they've been living in for 20 years. He had asked me, Courtney, what do you think? When's the market gonna crash? I was like, I don't know, but really, like I shared earlier, for my buyers, the most important thing you need to focus on is, what is my monthly payment? What do I need to bring to the closing table? And what does that buy me here in Las Vegas or wherever you're looking? I'm still beside myself, if you can tell, because it was just so crazy to me that this man and this woman have been paying rent to somebody and they don't own anything. The average mortgage is 30 years. 30 years. So for 20 of those years, he's been paying off the seller's mortgage, which they have completely paid off at this point. And he has no equity, no way to refinance and pull out money if he needs it for a vacation or if he wants to retire a little bit earlier. He has no avenue there. All he has is a home that he continues to rent. So something you should think about. Knowing what your mortgage is, you know what your monthly payment is. You know how much that you need to set aside every single month to be in the home that you're in. The second thing you need to consider is when you own a home, you have the opportunity to gain equity. Equity is great if 10 years from now, you look at your home and the value has raised, you can refinance that home, pull that equity out in cash, and do something for yourself with it. Whether it's putting money and adding value back to your home. Maybe you've always wanted a pool. You could put a pool back there and that adds value to your home. Maybe you need to redo the kitchen and put new appliances in. Again, adding value to that home, thus gaining more equity. So if you're out there and you've been renting and you're not really sure what to do, I always tell my buyers, the first thing you need to do is A, talk to an agent, and B, talk to a lender. You don't know what your options are unless you get some information and education. So if you're looking to talk to someone, feel free to reach out to me. My information is below. Before I get into the not so glamorous things about buying a home in 2023, my name is Courtney Bentley. I'm a luxury real estate agent here in Las Vegas, and I offer a concierge service, taking all the stress out of moving to my favorite city in the world, Las Vegas. I'm gonna go over the 3 major things that people are experiencing right now in the first quarter of 2023. First thing is appraisal gaps. This has been a nightmare, and across the board, many real estate agents I speak to were all saying the same thing. Oh my gosh, there is a huge difference in the purchase price that's been agreed on in the contract and the appraisal. So right now, banks are really tightening up their standards on giving loans, and they're also tightening their standards with appraisals. This literally just happened to me. I was representing the listing. We have it listed very conservatively. It's priced really well. It's a beautiful home in a gorgeous neighborhood. Lots and lots of showings. We finally find the right buyer and we negotiate the terms. We're getting a lease back. They're buying some of the furniture. Everybody's happy, warm and fuzzy. The price we agreed on, everybody's happy with. The appraisal comes in, not $5,000 under, not $10,000, but $15,000 under the contracted price. Crazy. So this is what happens in this scenario. The buyer has negotiated a appraisal contingency, which means that they can back out of the deal if we don't agree on the appraised value. Now with VA loans, there is no fighting the appraiser on the value that they've given. On other loans, a lot of times if this happens, I will go to the appraiser and I will fight for my clients to get to that number, especially when it's there. Like when I have comps that really support it and there's really no reason, I will fight till the end to get that number for my clients. But in this instance, it was a VA loan, so unable to fight. Very frustrating. The buyer's agent had called me and said to me, Courtney, I don't understand why this didn't appraise. We both agreed. The price we agreed on in the contract was very fair. We had tons of comps to support this price, but the appraiser wouldn't budge. So we had to go back to the drawing table and negotiate a new deal that would make everyone happy. But this is something that's very concerning and happening more often than not here in the Valley. I am hearing from other real estate agents that appraisals are coming in lower than expected, and this can really not make a deal work. If the buyer is unwilling to come up with the cash to pay over the appraised value and the seller is not willing to negotiate that price, the deal's probably gonna fall apart. That can be really frustrating because typically the appraisal comes in 18 to 21 days into that escrow. So that buyer's already forked out money for inspections. The title report's already come in. The sellers, if it's in an HOA, has already paid for the HOA resale packages to provide for the buyer. There's a lot of money and time that's been invested in that escrow to just have it all fall apart. So coming together and trying to figure out a new deal is usually the best option. Or if the buyer has some cash and maybe they want to fork over, that can help too. But we're seeing this more and more in today's market, and it can be very, very frustrating. Next up, we have loan interest rate changes. When you go to your lender, you're gonna get a pre-approval letter with an interest rate. That interest rate can change, which then changes your monthly payment, which then you may not qualify for that purchase price anymore. We're seeing this in the new home building. Now, homes like Toll Brothers and Tri Point, these can take 6 to 8 months, sometimes even a year to build. So if you have walked into that builder's office with your pre-approval letter at a certain interest rate, and that home is taking over a year to build, well, I'm sure you've been watching the news, interest rates have changed almost every single month. So you may not be able to qualify for that purchase price anymore, and you may not be able to buy that home. This is happening more often than not. I have many new home builders who call me and say, Courtney, we just had a home that's almost done fall out. Do you have any buyers? We can offer some incentives. We can work on something. This is also happening on these longer closing periods. If the loan is taking longer to close, the interest rate might change, the bank may not honor that interest rate, and the buyer may not qualify for that home anymore, or may not want to make that extra monthly payment. So these are all things to consider if you decide to buy a home in today's market. You need to make sure you have a lender who's on it. You need to make sure you have a lender that's honest and is telling you what is going on and can close quickly, so we can make sure we keep up with that interest rate. And you got to make a decision. Sometimes buyers will come to me and it could take up to 6 months to make a decision on a home. Nothing wrong with that. Happy to do it. I love working with my buyers and finding that perfect home. But with interest rates as they are, you may not qualify for that purchase price anymore. I literally just walked into an escrow last week because my buyer called me and said, Courtney, I need to make a decision today, right now, because my interest rate is gonna go up a whole percentage point and I'm not gonna wanna buy anything. So it's either now or never. Well, not never, but maybe way later. So we had to make a decision and negotiate a deal, and I was up till midnight negotiating this deal to make sure that she got that interest rate that she was told she could have. This is definitely something you need to think about if you want to enter our market right now. What do you think about today's market? Would you buy or not? Comment below, let's chat about it. I'm gonna give you a bonus disadvantage to buying in today's marketplace. We still have record low inventory. Yes, more homes are on the market, which is very exciting because buyers have choices now. And homes aren't going into contract as quickly, so you have a second to think about your purchase. Post-pandemic, it was really difficult for buyers. They walked in the house for 15 minutes and they had to decide right there and then if they were writing an offer. You couldn't go back to the home, which often I like to have my buyers do. If they like a home and they're thinking about writing an offer, I always suggest a second showing. Because in that second showing, we can really dive deep and look at the air conditioning unit, take a picture of the label, find out more information, look at the water heater. We can really do a kind of smaller due diligence. Definitely not an inspection, but just kind of look at the details of the home a little bit clearer versus back in the day when we were like crazy and there was tons of offers. My buyers had no opportunity to do that unless they entered contract and had a due diligence period that they could then do that, which is very frustrating. You don't want to negotiate this deal and then have the buyer come back and say, oh my gosh, I actually don't like this floor plan at all, or my dining room table I've had for 20 years isn't going to fit in this dining room. These are all things you can figure out in a second showing. So I think it's an amazing thing that a buyer can do this now and not feel that pressure like they once had. So if you're out there and you want to look at homes, definitely give me a call. I'd love to share with you some quick move-in options if you're looking at the new home route, or some options that may have not been on the public marketplace just yet. I have access to off-market properties, which I always love to share with my buyers so that we get in first. If you're thinking about buying a home this year, be sure to check out my videos. I give lots of insight and information. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and comment below.